Welcome to this week's class. Study case study discussion, and today we'll be discussing about our experiences, both personal and professionally, with kids or with different childhood disorders, and how what our experiences have been in supporting that child or a family who has had one. Now, I personally, in my immediate family, don't have a child with childhood disorder, but I have um, supported a family, an extended family member who has a child with that. So that's where I'll be coming from. And yes, my name is Patricia Toyo, and with me is Roxanne Whittingham, Lauren Turner, and Jesushetemi Oluwafemi. And so the child that I'll be discussing is a 3-year-old girl. She has nonverbal autism disorder. So it's characterized with lack of response to stimulus. She speaks, but not in alignment to specific stimulus. So she can sing, she can make words, she can form sentences and talk to herself. But when you call her, she's not responsive. When you try to reach out, she's not responsive. But a parent is working with an occupational therapist and a speech therapist to be able to help her be functional. And one of the ways that I came in as a support was because my aunt, who is the grandma of the baby girl, came to Canada recently to be with them. And, you know, whenever the mom, they had some words that they had to teach the parents, right? To be able to attend to the child. Whenever the mom called the girl and um try to feed her, she calls her in a way to let her know that okay, you're the one I'm talking to. But there's a particular phrase that I don't want to use. And back home, you would also use that kind of phrase, but translated to our language. And it was almost like you were calling a pet, like if you had a pet dog. So the mom was a bit irritated. That's grandma was a bit irritated that why are you calling my grandbaby like you're talking to a dog? Which can be kind of offensive for a mother who is struggling to, help a child who is going through autism. Also, there's routine in the house that they're doing to make sure that the child wakes at a particular time, goes to bed at a particular time. So there's rituals that they do. You wake up in the morning, you do some activities with her, she brushes her teeth. In fact, now that she's getting older, she does those things by herself. So she wakes up about 5 minutes to the time or 5 minutes past her wake up time by herself, goes to the bathroom, use the washroom by herself and all that. But grandma is so excited. She's here. She wants to hold her grandbaby. She doesn't want her to go to bed. So that just throws like some spoke in the wheel of the trend that the family is already establishing. So I had to come in because I'm very close with my auntie and reach out to her and talk to her about why we needed this to happen at this time. And it was good that we're seeking help right now because there's a lot of people back home who don't have the resources that we are having to access now for this baby at this time. So that's my way that I have. That's one experience that I've had. I don't know. I don't want to hold the mic too long, so that if we all have different experiences and individual ways, and we can build up on that. I'll be passing the mic over to Roxanne.
Okay, thanks, Patricia. So, my name again, Roxanne Whittingham, and I am also looking at, experiences working with a child with autism. Um, it was a little bit of like a coexisting issue, if you want to, if you can term it like that. This child was 14 years old. So I work in the high schools as a graduation coach, and so that was how I was introduced to this child. So to kind of back up a little bit, because since this is personal, like a personal experience, it's a little bit more, informal, right? So how I met this child there was an event. I think they were having a game, or at school, or it was a drop in. Parents were dropping in at the same time to give tours to like the new grade nines, right? So they'll be coming in from the elementary, they're touring high school and getting set to come in for the new school year. So as a graduation coach, usually when students like black students come in, they would normally be brought to my attention. But anyway, this child was not brought to my radar at all for any kind of supports. I just came out in the hallway and just kind of bumped into, a teacher was there trying to talk to this girl, and she just froze. She just froze in the hall. She wouldn't talk to her. She was just frozen with a frozen smile. She was smiling, and they were talking to her, and she would not respond. She just stood there, frozen and smiling. And so I walked up to her, and the I think it was one of the student success teachers said to me, "Do you know her?" And I said, "No, I don't." And then, she said, "We just met her in the hallway trying to communicate. This is a new student. Nobody gave us any profile on her, and we don't know how to communicate. We can't get anything out of her." As a grad coach working with racialized students, would I be willing to talk to her? So I said, sure. And so I introduced myself, and I said, come with me, if you're okay. And she smiled and she followed me, and went into my office. I think shortly after, the mom came behind. And the mom was kind of, she started explaining to me what happened. I'm like, it's okay. You can come in my room for more, privacy. And so mom came in, because obviously, even as a 14-year-old child, she still was not able to, do what, a regular 14-year-old would do, be able to navigate the system, speak for herself, advocate for herself, kind of thing. So mom obviously had to be there. And she was a little bit annoyed at the child, because she was saying to me, well, she speaks at home, so I don't know. And she was kind of almost like shouting at her that she should answer me. And I was like, no, don't pressure her. Just let her be. And so we went in my office and sat down, gave her somewhere to sit, make her comfortable, explain who I am, what I do. And she just sat there and she just smiled, and she was just looking, it was almost like staring right through me, but just not responding. And her mom kept pushing and yelling, why don't you answer? Why are you, making me look like I'm a liar? So obviously, mom, and I mean, I can't discuss this case without bringing mom into it, because she was heavily involved from day one until they eventually withdrew her from school. So some of the things I saw was that language issue. So everybody thought she was dumb. That was the perception. All the teachers thought she was dumb because she wouldn't respond. When her mom would be yelling, mom, like, she knows what's going on. She's hearing you. She understands everything. And it was kind of hard for me to believe the story she was telling, because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to judge her, but, it's hard for you to be telling somebody she can talk, she understands, but then everything else is, saying otherwise. But I didn't judge. And so she was there, and then mom is like, okay, go and write Miss Roxanne's name on the board. And so she was hesitant, and mom kept prodding her, pushing her kind of. So she got up, she took the marker, and I started to spell my name. And her mom said, no, don't spell for her. Let her do it. She can do it. And then I said, okay. And then I stopped. Um, and she spelled my name accurately. Most people would spell my name, Roxanne, with an E. She did not spell my name with an E, and I didn't say anything to her. So then, like, oh, so yes, so she does understand what's going on, but she won't speak, right? So she had delayed speech. But I think the issue with her mainly was she has a select mutism. So a lot of challenges at school, because when she came back in, still everybody thought she was dumb. Kids would tease her, and a lot of times she got into issues with the boys. So like when you talk about the development in terms of like age, chronological age and all of that, and knowing some of the things that are acceptable. She'll be chasing the boys in the boys' bathroom. She'll be touching the boys, on their butt or on their groin, and she'll be laughing. And she wouldn't realize that some of those things are not acceptable. So there's a lot of, uproar in the school. Like every day, teachers be complaining. They'll be calling me down to say that she's disrupting classes or whatever. And then teachers could not, they didn't know how to teach. They didn't know how to much because she wouldn't even do any schoolwork, right? If they would put her on the computer to do some work, she would just go off to some other thing and probably watching like cartoon or something like that. She wouldn't focus on her work kind of thing. So it was a bit of a challenge. A lot of times, like I said, lunch times, kids would tease her, they would hit her and run, and then she would chase them, especially the boys. And for most times, I always have to, some of my other kids would come to me and say, "Hey, Miss Roxanne, they're abusing the girl that doesn't talk." That's what So she already had a label, right? Anyway, so for most times I had to let her stay with me in my office at lunchtime. Mom asked me, just for her safety, so that they wouldn't tease her or cause her, the boys wouldn't tease her and cause her to like run off in the bathroom. There was also a time too when I said to girls, like she's trying to make friends, and then kids would use that to abuse her in the sense that they would tell her to do some silly things. Then they would record her and then they would post it. And, like her mom, when she goes home, that's the part of it that really was surprising to me. When she goes home, she would talk. And her mom was always trying to convince me, Miss Roxanne, she's a parrot at home. And I'm like, I can't, I can't see that. But if you say so, kind of thing. But the good thing is that mom and I developed such a close relationship because I was kind of like the protective factor for her at school. Like, mom was like, make sure that she's in your office if she's not in class, supervise, make sure she's in your class. So a lot of times, like, she didn't have no friends. I would see her in the hallway just standing there looking out of space, or she'd be walking back and forth. So she'd do like repetitive walks up the hall, down the hall, up the hall, down the hall. And she just has like this one smile just on her face, always smiling, always smiling. I never see that girl sad, you know? Um, but then, um, you know, there was one day when I spoke to mom. I'm like, wow, I would really like to see her in action talking. And so mom had a conversation with her and recorded her. And I actually heard her say to her mom, "Are you recording me?" I was like, "You got to be kidding." And I was like, "Yes, because you won't talk at school." And her mom said to her, "Why won't you talk at school and let people know that you can talk?" And she said, "Because my brain won't let me. My brain won't let me talk to anybody strange." And I thought that was very profound. That was very moving. And I think from that day on, like I made it my point of duty to learn more and more about, that the select mutism part of, her autistic behavior, because she also diagnosed autistic. But she was brilliant because after I got her settled, she got to trust me. I was advocating with the teachers, I was advocating with admin, I advocated for her to get student success teachers, I advocated for her to get extra time to do assignments. I advocated for them to print stuff so that she wouldn't have to be going from, like go on to, cartoons or whatever, and just send the work home to mom. And I was kind of like the bridge between home and school and and the teachers. So it was a very interesting to work with this young lady, very smart, very brilliant. But then, and she was able to articulate that her brain would not just allow her to talk to anybody in public. And then, people just assume that, she was dumb. Right. So, I mean, I don't want to make it a monologue. I can come back to some points after so that everybody get a chance to say something, but I can add some more later on just to break the monotony. So I'll hand over to Lauren.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so for my experience, I'm using my brother during his teenage years, particularly because he's only 2 years younger than me. So, um, when he was a child, I guess that we didn't really pick up on his ADHD until he was kind of a teenager and going into high school. So growing up, he did have difficulty sometimes focusing on certain tasks and regulating some of his emotions, especially in school. I think sometimes he was labeled as not trying hard enough, which did impact his self esteem in the long run.
Mhm,
I do remember him sometimes getting frustrated easily over homework or tasks that did require a sustained amount of attention. Over time, I could see how constant correction and comparison to his peers did make him kind of doubt himself. But at the same time, he was like so incredibly energetic and
mhm,
passionate. And when he's interested in something, he is just puts his all into it. When he found topics that he loved, he could really like hyper focus for hours and produce something like awesome. Um, I think he also has like that natural ability to think outside the box,
mhm,
especially like to me, and come up with ideas that I wouldn't even consider myself. He has a great sense of humor. He has high energy, which also makes him very engaging and just fun to be around. When teachers or family members focus on his strengths instead of like some things that he had challenges with, he thrived during school, and especially moments where he was like praised for his creativity or sometimes taking leadership in like a group project. It really boosted his confidence and how he was capable of doing those things. Um, a major turning point for him was connecting with the guidance counselor at our high school. He got therapy through her, which was really great. She provided a safe space where he could feel heard, like a non-biased opinion, and it really made a significant difference in how he viewed himself academically and
mhm,
socially. Also, therapy helped him develop some coping skills for his emotional regulation, and just like self-worth. So over time, I could see how him gaining more confidence and learning that ADHD wasn't necessarily a flaw, but just a different way that his brain works, I think made him accept it better. And that support system played a huge role in helping him build like resilience for sure.
mhm,
Um, with our family, growing up, my parents were sometimes like stressed and like unsure on how to handle some of his behaviors effectively just because it's something that they weren't familiar with. I also noticed that sometimes attention was like not focused on managing his needs, and sometimes it just kind of made like a imbalance kind of in my family. But once we kind of learned more about ADHD and understood that many behaviors were just like his brain, like neurological based rather than intentional, it really shifted everybody's perspective that there was more patience, more structure, definitely more empathy as we learned more and more about it. As a family, we became more open in communication, more intentional on creating routines that supported him really well. I think we also learned to celebrate the small wins more, which I think created a more like positive atmosphere in our house. So in many ways, supporting him brought us closer and definitely helped us grow in understanding and having compassion for people with ADHD. Um, at school, the level of understanding from teachers made a huge difference, which I think I briefly said before, when teachers implemented accommodations for him, like chunking different assignments or giving clear step by step instructions, even giving him some like extended time when he would write some tests. It definitely made him more successful in classrooms where he was kind of felt misunderstood. He participated more and he was able to build stronger relationships with the people in his classes, which is great. When there was less understanding, I think he felt singled out. That definitely, I think, affected like his motivation with his schoolwork. Um, it also highlighted like how important it is for early intervention and how people with ADHD, like teenagers especially, being in supportive environments can help them succeed more academically and socially. So yeah, so that was kind of my experience, and it really shaped my interest in mental health because having a family member deal with that, and it was kind of like an unknown for a little while until we got that, like, what's the word? Not like validation from the therapist that, okay, like this is, why he might act this way or that way. Really, it made things clearer. So we were able to like just move forward instead of move backwards. Watching him navigate helped me understand how, again, early support, validation, and like strength based approaches, how important they are. It reminded me that ADHD can affect identity and self worth and not just somebody's attention or behavior patterns. Um, but overall, he's 2 years younger than me now, so he's turning 21 this year, and he could not be better. So that is my experience with ADHD with a family member throughout my teenage years. So so Temi, if you want to share yours, you can take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will, in my own experience, personally, I don't have an experience like, when I mean personally directly, but I have an experience with like a niece of mine. She was at that time, she was, I think, 5 year old, and I noticed that she didn't really have good eye contact, like she had limited eye contact. And because I of my profession, I'm as a nurse, I noticed that at 5 year old there are some cognitive things that she should have been doing at that age. But I noticed that like she had limited eye contact. Mostly when they call her name, she rather doesn't respond, or it takes like multiple calls before she actually responded to her name. And also, she had like delayed speech, like compared to her other children, because like she was going to daycare. And when I asked her mom if she had noticed um any slow delay, the mom was like, because the mom wasn't experienced, she was like, oh, maybe like she feels like it's just normal. Maybe child was shy. Maybe she told me that she thought the child was just shy to speak around people. But I now like encouraged her to take the child to the hospital just to rule out any issue. And at the long run, the child was later diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. So, and um we when they asked the mother, she felt kind of ashamed, like she didn't go earlier. So the doctor like asked her some couple of questions, because I was following up with the mom. The mom was explaining to the doctor that a child usually prefer to play alone, and sometimes like she had a particular routine that the child liked to keep, and the child usually gets upset if the routine changes. So the mother usually just think that they were just normal, no age appropriate behavior, like the child 5 year old should be, but she didn't know it was part, like those were kind of the symptoms of the autism. So like I said earlier, the mom thought she was just shy and probably thinking that the child was going to develop at her own pace, like that. And from the kind of country that I come from, in African Nigeria country, we usually don't see kids that have autism in spectrum over there. They just believe that probably child will talk when child wants to talk. But because they spent some time with me in Canada, that's when I noticed that this 5 year old should be able to do most things. We should do some things that a normal 5 year old do. But that's when we noticed all this. So it was kind of difficult, because like I didn't want to like make my sister, I didn't want to make her feel, I don't want to make my auntie feel judged. So I just approached it gently. So like I came like to be very supportive. So I talked about developmental milestones, and I also suggested what might help, to for her to talk to with the pediatrician whenever she goes, because
when she went to the doctor, it just actually had to refer her to a pediatrician so they can just really, really see what was wrong with the child. So when she, like I said, when she eventually went to the doctor, she was evaluated and they diagnosed with her with autism spectrum disorder. So like, and having the new disorder, my auntie was very emotional. She was like, oh, and it was her first child, so she felt, she felt like shock and she felt guilt, like she probably, if, excuse me, if she knew about that kind of disorder, she would have probably gone earlier when the child was 2 or 3, and maybe they will have been able to do something quick. And one thing that she was like most worried about was that she didn't know, like fear of the future. Like she didn't know, okay, how long was the child going to be like that, remain like that, not talking, not keeping no eye contact and all that. So during the process and everything, she kept me. I encouraged her to make sure they go for their pediatrician appointment, just so that they can help with the disorder. And I also told her to keep me, you know, informed, up to date and everything. Then I explained to her that, and I explained to her, if with proper care and with proper, therapy, that the kids will probably catch up with that age group. And I actually encourage them to focus on the child's strengths, because we noticed that the child she had a very good memory. Like she was very, very good with puzzles. So even at her age, you see that she was very, very smart with puzzles. So like, I always encourage my aunt then that she should just focus on this positive aspect. Like she shouldn't just focus solely on the negative aspects. And with how they were going to the pediatrician, with my own experience too, I also helped them to research on interventions, know how they can intervene early. Also help them with speech therapy and things like occupational therapy that can actually help the child to also improve better. And so with the child, we were so gentle with her, patient with her, and we actually at home, like some of the things, because they were staying with me in Canada. So some of the things that we actually worked on were like, we helped her showed her how to use like visual schedules at home. Like if she wanted something, she wouldn't talk, but we got like pictures, like beautiful pictures, attractive pictures of kids. She can point at them to tell us what she wants. And with that, when she points at it, like for instance, she points at burger, for instance, we can just like say burger, so that she can actually say, they repeat the word after, like after us. So those were kind of helping the girl to start this talking little by little and keeping eye contact also. Then I also encourage that I reassure them that because they felt guilty, right? They felt guilty. The auntie felt guilty with her partner. They felt guilty. So I encouraged them that they did not cause the spectrum, did not cause the disorder, and that seeking that, even though they didn't seek help early enough, but even though they seek help now at when the child was 5 years old, that is still better than waiting for the child to like be 8, 9, and then they now become very, very worried, and something might have really gone um bad with the brain. So I noticed that. So when after all this, after we go back and forth with the pediatrician, we started using visual aids. Repeating words. We'll make her repeat words after us. We talk to her like adults, like we really talk to her adults, age appropriate to. I we noticed that at the long run, my niece started talking, started using more words, and she, unlike before, that she just like throws a big meltdown if she doesn't get something, or if her routine is changed. We noticed that she had fewer meltdowns, and she like became more comfortable in a familiar setting. And even when we go out, unlike before, when we go out, she just like to cling onto mother. She doesn't make friends. She doesn't mix with the age group. But after the treatment with the therapy, we noticed that she started mixing with people little by little. And another important thing was that in my aunt's life, I saw that there was more confidence, and she started feeling like confident. She didn't feel like left alone again. She didn't feel like she felt slightly less guilty. So, and overall, the experience with this child made me realize that is very, very important to recognize early recognition of this spectrum, because when we recognize them early enough, it helps at the long run, so it doesn't lead to something that will be too hard to manage in the future. And also, it's make me realize that we have to be compassionate, because not everybody is really experienced, or not everybody knows about the spectrum. So, and this is very important, because when we are supporting family, we don't want the family to think that, like the country I come, like I said earlier, like the country I come from, we don't believe things like that. They don't believe mental problem. They don't believe a child will have a disease or a disorder or something. So they don't believe that. But when we talk to them compassionately, and we don't make them feel judged, it's a very, very, or it's also very important. And basically it's also is the this experience, when my niece was going through all this, maybe it's reinforced how powerful early intervention and parental support can be, in improving the outcome of the child that has autism. So all in all, after she started talking, she started mixing with her age appropriate people. Even when she started school, we noticed that she started doing well in school, started interacting more with children in school. She's a brilliant child, like I said. She grabs things fast. She grabs things, and she was very, very good with puzzles. But just that she doesn't like to interact with other people. And when they ask, she knows the answer, but when they ask the question, for her to say the answer to the teacher is always like she avoids eye contact. But at the long run, when we started therapy, we started with the visual aid. We encouraged the school also to use the visual aid. Started speaking, started interacting more with other people. So basically, like, that experience taught me that seeking help early, and a parent, not only healthcare professional, a parent should actually know the age appropriate milestones of a child. So when they know, oh, my child is this age, what should my child be doing at this particular age? What is my child not doing at a particular age? Because I know that in nursing, like when the child is coming for pediatrician checkup or whatever, they ask the child, what is the child doing, what is the child not doing. So if a parent knows the milestones that the child should reach at a particular age, they can put that down. So when they see the pediatrician, they know what to tell the pediatrician. So all in all, early intervention and early intervention is very key to this, and also being compassionate to any family or that has that kind of experience also is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you so
There's
much,
some very
Dr.
interesting
Yeah,
points.
just to build upon what Dr. said about early intervention, some of the protective factors also include being like a good support system for the family members, whether as a family, friend, or as teachers and healthcare professionals. And one of such ways that I was able to do that for my cousin was to babysit the girl when the mom needed a break, maybe to go fix her hair, to go to the spa, fix her nails or whatnot, and also create play dates for my son and the girl, even though you have to actually be like a referee between the two kids because since she's not able to like express herself verbally, she would bite my son and, eat him. I I have to like help him understand that okay, she doesn't really understand. You need to be patient with her and all that. So being a good support system for the family and for that child is a good protective factor.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm happy you mentioned that, because I was just really thinking about some of these things. And Patricia, when the child is younger, it's kind of easier. Like certainly said, mom was thinking that maybe the child is shy or will eventually get around. But in the case of my client who was, like 14, right? So these things are going to stand out. So now everybody's going to know that. there is an issue. Does everyone agree with what I'm saying? Right? Because if you have
Yeah.
a 14-year-old that is going to
Yeah.
be biting people
Yeah.
and groping people, then it's
There's
going to
a
be
big
very
problem.
obvious.
Yes.
Yeah, right. And so what I found, it was like it brought a lot of embarrassment to mom, and frustration too, because like she was shouting at the child to do the things so that prove them, like prove
Prove
them
them
wrong.
wrong.
Right, yeah, prove
Yeah.
them very hard on her emotionally. I feel like a little bit even harder on mom than the child, herself, right? And she was a brilliant girl too. Like, a lot of these kids, they're very smart in their own unique way. But sometimes, like, when people tend to focus on the weaknesses and not on the strengths, like, I don't know if it was Satamir or Lauren, her brother, when the teachers are focusing on the strengths, then they will move away and find that the relevant supports or whoever the person is, right? And so, and another thing that I heard Satame mention was something around culture, or Patricia, and that cultural piece was huge because I was the only person comfortable telling the inside story. You know what I mean? And telling me where she wants me to support, what I should look out for, because she just didn't want anybody else to know. She was just thinking that, if they know this, they're gonna judge her. She always speak to her academia, her, like to say, like, we are doctors, right? They, professionally they're doctors, but not in that regard. And I find that she leaned heavily on the spiritual aspect of culture. I think Setame alluded to that. So she figured that somebody was doing something to her child, and so she paid thousands of dollars to travel back to Africa to bring this girl to a spiritual leader, to pray for her. And like, I saw that and I didn't judge her, and I was saying, it was very hard for her to accept. So that piece, the challenge for mom to accept that, look, there's something wrong here in, like, with the child, it's the brain that's having the issue. Nothing is wrong with the child herself, kind of thing. It was very hard. So that big denial piece, right? So I could see mom really, really struggling with it, and the amount of money that she would spend to travel, to go around to all these spiritual leaders, just trying to get anybody to pray away what she was noticing with her daughter. So I had to really work with her from a cultural lens, make her feel comfortable enough and feel safe. So every time she comes to school, she would come to my office to explain her challenges. Every time she wants to communicate anything to the teachers, she would pass it through me, or I would say to her, you know what, if you're having an issue with the teachers, just CC me on all communication, right? So she knows that I have eyes on everything, right? So it gave her some amount of comfort. So, like Patricia said, in all, just being like a good support in any way you can, because sometimes you don't have all the answers, right? But just being a good support. Like, my daughter too has a little friend who is autistic. And like Patricia said, when they're playing, I have to really watch them, because sometimes he would just hit her out of the blues. He would just get up and just give her one hard hit, and my daughter would scream and scream, right? And I have to just talk to her and say to her, be patient with her. I know you're a baby, you don't understand, but he didn't mean it that way, right? And I could see the distress on the mom's face, and asking the little boy to apologize. So yeah, it's really challenging for her, as she said. She doesn't get much of a break because, she said to send her son to grandma. Her grandma refuses to take him for a day. Sometimes dad will leave most of the work on her, because nobody understands her son, and sometimes, they don't want to be associated with the stigma, or nobody wants to say, if the child gets hurt, I don't want to be responsible, kind of thing. So it's very hard on the family. It's very hard on the mothers, I feel, especially in the two cases that I've had to deal with. The mom just said that, mentally she just feels so drained, so overwhelmed, so frustrated, and sometimes she feels so embarrassed that her child is not operating like other kids. So yeah, I don't know if anybody else want to comment.
Yeah, nothing more from my end. I think it's been a great discussion so far on how we can support both from personal, familial, and professional settings. Children with childhood disorders. Um, we'll discuss more next time we meet.
Yeah, thank you everybody for sharing your experiences.
Yeah.
Thanks. I learned
Thank
a
you,
lot.
everyone.
Thank
Thank
you. I
you.
learned quite a bit.
Bye bye.